So for anyone who's ever seen the movie The Exorcist, this house over here to my left is where the story goes it originated. William Bowdern, who was the Exorcist, claimed that they saw the Roman numeral X appear on the kid's body, and he felt that signified that 10 demons were involved in whatever possession activity was occurring at the time. The family started noticing weird sounds inside the house.
What was going on there? I mean, the story goes that there was playing with a Ouija board or something like that? Or?
It was like in January 1949, and he had an aunt by the name of Harriet who actually was from St. Louis, and she would come visit the family quite a bit in Mount Rainier. And she kind of taught him about how to use a Ouija board, and if he wanted to speak with other, like the dead and stuff like that, that's the best way to do it.
Stuff.
Right. And so I think there was one night I recall in the book that they talked about his mom and dad went out for a night out, and he was there at the house by himself with his grandma. And apparently they started hearing like this drip, like from a sink. And they went to check on it, and there was nothing there. It was weird. Like, they just could hear it, but they couldn't find a drip anywhere. So then they started hearing, like, the scratching noise going on underneath his grandmother's bed and the floor.
That's kind of creepy.
Yeah, it's pretty creepy.
Just kind of hid in the closet for a long time because, as years have gone on.
Okay.
It used to be like, now you have things of schizophrenia,
right,
bipolar disorder, things like that. So now there's a clinical reason for a lot of this stuff. Whereas back then, it was easy for them to say, oh, well, it's demonic possession or the devil's involved or something like that.
We're getting ready to enter Belnor. That's where the house is located here in St. Louis, North County. This is where it all happened. What year was this, Bobby?
1949.
1949. I wasn't even born. So... yep, we're going to drive down the street where the house is at, and, ooh.
I know where you got your facts from on this.
There's a book I've been reading. It's called Possessed by Thomas B. Allen.
Okay.
And that kind of documents the events from when this whole thing started in Maryland to where it ended in St. Louis.
Okay. So there you go. So there's some...
He was kind of like the real pioneer of really wanting to dig deep and find all this kind of information.
So this is the information we're using. This
And
is the most reliable you're going to get.
What made the Exorcism or the Exorcist movie? It became a movie because of the story, but from what I've seen, there's been tens of thousands of different exorcisms.
Right. I did a little research on this too, and it's a good, interesting point you brought up. So from what I gather, from what I read, this until that point, within like the last 200 or 300 years, this was the most significant,
right? Proof
case that this really happened on this level. I'm sure there was a lot more, and I'm sure there's been more since, but this was one that was really famous.
Right.
Yeah, it inspired the book by William Peter Blatty, and which turned into a movie. So,
okay, so how did he end up in St. Louis? How did that all transpire?
Well, what happened was apparently the kid, like, he would have like lesions. Like there was a priest in Maryland tried to speak to him, and when he witnessed things, and he was trying to get, because to perform an exorcism for a priest, that you have to have documentation, you have to have proof that you have to present to like the archdiocese or
the bishop and all that, right?
Yeah, whoever.
It has to be approved by the
Vatican.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely has to be approved. Yes.
So in the process of him doing that, apparently some things went wrong, and he wasn't able to get that approval, and that's when apparently at the time the kid was having like lesions and like scratches and
I heard that
things on his body. And there was a moment there where he had Lewis spelt out and scratches on his chest, and I guess that was significant to the family, where they felt like, well, they're their family's from St. Louis, or the mother's family was from St. Louis, so that's when they came to St. Louis, thinking that might help.
And the aunt's from St. Louis,
The aunt,
right?
that's what I was
Yes,
going to say.
the
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 aunt
aunt was from
there,
St.
too.
Louis, so
Right. So
I wonder if the aunt was a demon.
who knows, right? So I guess that's what made them decide to come to St. Louis then, right?
yeah, and I think they thought maybe a hope that maybe it would not follow them, or I think that was a change of scenery might make things better, but
Right.
it just continued when they came here.
Yeah, there's a rectory that's in the back of the church, which I think was remodeled sometime since 1949, obviously, and the Jesuit buildings across the street. So all these areas down here were actually where the Exorcist took place.
Part of the
Yeah.
exorcism took place.
Yeah.
Part of it. So Lexington Brothers Hospital, and
That's where the majority of it took place. The Lexington Brothers Hospital.
all here in St. Louis, Missouri. So
So now we're at the location of the former location of the Lexington Brothers Hospital, where the majority of the exorcism took place.
down to the Alexian Brothers Hospital and to the rectory of the church downtown, and I thought they brought him back. So they were going back and forth with the kid,
They were.
and was it was like 8 weeks or something, wasn't
It
it?
was a couple months. Yeah.
Couple months, and then why don't you like tell from what you read that some of the events that happened while they were doing it? I think it was pretty like hardcore, some of the stuff that was happening.
It was just a lot of they claimed, there was claims that beds were shaking, furniture was moving, there was welts and scratches appearing on his body.
Levitation too, right? There was
I don't know if I didn't know. I don't think I read a whole lot about the levitation thing.
So I thought
Well, there's been, the man who actually did the exorcism himself, his name was William Bowdern. And the day he died, he believed what he saw was, in fact, like some type of demonic possession. Now, there was other people who witnessed what happened, and they did find it bizarre. And it was,
yeah, there was wasn't there like 4 to 6 people in the room at all times? That's what I understood.
Yeah.
Sometimes family members, sometimes a couple of Jesuit priests or whoever. There was always like 4 to 6 people in there, weren't there?
But there were some people who they never, other than him, some of them were hesitant to, define that as a official possession case.
Like they weren't completely convinced.
Right.
It seemed
I
like
gotcha.
someone
Because
fly
there's a
across
lot
the
of
room.
things that could have happened there that, especially when you think about the scratches or whatever.
Right.
Some of that, a kid could
self-inflicted.
have done that to himself.
So yeah, well, how do you do this to yourself? So I also read, and you tell me if this was right or not, that the kid was projecting stuff out of his mouth with pinpoint accuracy from people that were, I'm serious, across the room.
Wow.
that was a claim. That was made.
Actually, that's what I thought
That's what they claimed. They
Now, that spring that came out when they were still
That
over-
was
yeah,
in
that was the
Maryland,
one.
yeah.
That was the other. He cut the guy's arm or
Did
something.
he?
didn't
Yeah.
Did he rig that thing out of it with his hand?
Yeah, they
did
had
he-
him restrained pretty much all the time. And when he was restrained in this bed back in Maryland, apparently somehow the kid was able to break loose a bed spring out of the bed, and he slashed the priest.
So he took it, and so it's
How
not
do
like
you-
it shot out of there.
How do you
or anything.
loosen a bed spring out of a bed when you're laying in it? I mean,
Yeah, it must have been
it's
a shit
crazy.
bed.
Yeah, well, you got to
Crappy
bend the
bed.
wire and break.
That's
Was he had
what
some wire
they
snippers in
claim.
there? Anyway,
Yeah, it must have been.
that's
a
what they
bad
claimed
bed.
to happen. But there was other things that happened too. There was the welts. There was some levitation, and he was Was he speaking in different languages too? I heard that too as well. Is that not true?
That's what they said.
I believe it was the summer of in the 70s. It was one of the hottest summers in St. Louis. that they had one of the wings closed at the Alexian Brothers Hospital, and they were getting ready to do some type of remodeling to it. I believe that was before the hospital was officially closed down. And there was a wing of the hospital that hadn't been used in years since the exorcism took place. And they went into this wing to see what they could salvage as far as, whatever was in there. And they noticed that, with being the summertime, the AC was cut off to that side of the hospital, or that wing of the hospital. Well, when they entered it, it was ice cold, apparently, according to the story. And when they were going through that wing of the hospital, they found a diary in one of the drawers in one of the rooms. Come to find out, it was a diary that was used by the exorcist himself, William Bodern. Well, they presented that to William Bodern years later, and he actually, according to the story, confirmed that it was his diary. No one has actually, it's in the hands of the archdiocese now. No one has seen the diary. According to William Blatty, who is the writer of the Exorcist movie, or the book, he had actually been one of the few people who was allowed to look at the diary and read it.
In 1940 something, all this went down here in St. Louis, Missouri. But very interesting story. A lot of facts, a lot of myths, a lot of hearsay. So you kind of got to read between the lines and pull out of this what you will. One thing's for sure, it's a creepy story.